Hi there. I'm excited to be talking with James Green, my youngest son, today about his book, I Am Love. And we're going to be talking about love and relationships during millennials in this COVID season. I look forward to you all tuning in to hear what James has to say. Hello. How are you?
I'm excellent. How about yourself?
I'm wonderful. You look so handsome.
Oh man, listen.
You're not just my guest for the day. You are my son, my baby boy. And I love you and I miss you. I just need to say that.
I miss you too.
I'm excited about our conversation.
Me too. I've been hype all day.
Yeah, we talk about a lot all the time.
You?
So it's good to have this opportunity to have this conversation publicly with folk. How are you doing there in Baltimore? 2,800 miles away from me. How are you doing?
First and foremost, missing you as always. Secondly, I'm just grateful to be in good health. That Ari's in good health. That you're in good health where you are. That Kyle and Kylie and little Kyle are good. So as far as I'm concerned, man, I'm just grateful. Uh,
Amen.
yeah.
Amen. All right, so we're talking about love and relationships in this time of COVID-19, particularly where millennials are concerned. You know, a lot of people are having their thing with love and relationships at this time. If you're single, you're missing love. And if you're married, some people are feeling crowded right now because they've not spent this much time with their spouses in forever, right?
Yeah.
But I want to start off with this. Some months ago, Gail King did an interview on Extra, and
Okay.
she talked about how daunting it has been for her during COVID-19, spending so much time by herself. She's usually going out doing a whole lot of things,
Okay.
but she talked about how daunting it is to be single right now. How are you doing, Mr. Single James Green, in all of this social distancing and sheltering in place? How are you doing?
I can't complain. I'm good. I think that, and you may hear my computer go off a couple times. You just excuse me. I'm good though. Honestly, I've been really focused on Ari, talking to a lot of my friends, just kind of staying sane, and that's really been it.
So, as a single young man,
Hmm.
30 something year old man, this has not been in any way, I won't say distracting. You haven't felt a sense of loneliness, I guess I should say.
Well, one, I haven't been lonely, if I'm
Okay.
honest.
Okay.
Um, but two, I also enjoy spending time by myself. I think that the other thing is, and you know this, I work so much
Mhm.
that I really don't have time to be bored. Sometimes I wish that I did have time to be bored,
Mhm.
and then maybe I might be lonely. But to be honest, I work in a capacity where like I'm on the front lines most days, and so I'm working or I'm doing virtual learning or all of those things. And I will say that there are moments when like it calms down. And I think I've expressed this to you, just the desire to have somebody to come home to at the end of the
For
day
sure.
and just talk to about all the things that are happening in the world. And so again, I'm grateful for the ability to be able to rely on my friends. But you know, that person is irreplaceable. The ability to have that conversation with that person and to confide in that person is irreplaceable. So I can completely understand why Gail may feel lonely at this time, but I'm pretty sure she can go to Oprah's big house and chill out with her in Stedman. So she should
Okay.
be good.
On another note, or in the same spirit of dating and loneliness, I understand I had been told about this, and then I finally saw it, this idea of dating with Zoom or dating
Okay.
via Zoom, and
Okay.
people fixing the same meals and sitting down together with candles and wine. And how do you feel about that? Have you done it? Would you be interested in doing it? How do you feel about that?
I have not done it. I would definitely be interested in doing it if for no other reason than to try it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that it's dope. I think that the ability to integrate these virtual experiences into our everyday lives, and you know, I've pushed you for years to
Yes,
kind of integrate
yes.
integrate some of the digital aesthetic into your life. And I think that it gives us an opportunity to tune out the noise, and you have to ask, you know, really, really good questions. You aren't able to be distracted by just going out on a date and going bowling or doing this. Like, you're literally physically in a space where you have to ask questions. So I think that there's an advantage to virtual dating. However, I know that some people still tend to be elusive. So you got to ask some good questions. I'm down for it, and I would love to do it.
And let me ask you this, as you're talking to your friends, your millennial friends during this time over the last couple of months, what's the conversation been like, particularly for those who are also single like yourself? What has those conversations been like? Are people using this as a time of reflection and reboot, or is it more about, I'm just tired and I'm ready for this to be over?
I think that it's been a mixture, right? Like, I think that, millennials, and I kind of find myself on like the cusp of that. But I think that there's this kind of consensus that everybody wants it to be over. I also feel like there's this group of people who are very much enjoying it, those who would deem themselves as introverts. They're taking this opportunity to sleep or to really kind of get a more intimate relationship with themselves, with God, just really finding out what it is that they want. And then there are other individuals who I think are going a little stir crazy and don't know what to do with themselves because they've never spent this much time alone or with their thoughts or with themselves. Um, Reflecting on whether or not they like their self-image, be it physically or mentally. And I think that this COVID-19, like stay at home or stay in place order, it can mentally break a lot of people. So I just pray that people are really taking that opportunity in part to learn themselves, but also in part to bring some other good things into their space. Like, some of my friends have been practicing meditation and yoga, reading good books. I think that those things are always really, really good. But also just taking time for self-reflection, because there would be nothing worse than to exit COVID-19 and to jump into another toxic situation because
That is
you're
so true.
anxious about being in a relationship or relating to someone other than having been in that space by yourself.
Absolutely. I think that is a great segue into the topic of your book. In
Okay.
2017, you wrote your first book titled I Am Love.
Yeah.
And I had the wonderful pleasure of publishing that book for you through Morals and Values Press, which was certainly an honor for me. But I want to know, what made you write about love?
Man, I think that to some degree, love has been a divine assignment for me. And as much as it's been my gift, it's also been my burden. I, at a very, very young age, was
Isn't
able.
that, let me just say this real quick.
Yeah.
Isn't it something that is our assignment can be as much of a blessing to us as it can be a burden? And I think sometimes when we think assignments, we think of excitement, of joy, of fulfillment and satisfaction. And we don't always count in the cost of the burden of that assignment and seeing that assignment through. So I thank you for interjecting that.
No, absolutely. I think that, if I can, and I mean, I know we have these conversations all the time, spiritually speaking, like, love and spirituality are one and the same for me. Like, and I'm not even talking about religion. I don't, not even talking about who you call God or what you believe in. It's that there are energies that abound in the universe, and we're engaging each other in that space, and that is spirit, right? So I think that for me, at a very, very young age, as I was kind of alluding to a moment ago, I was able to recognize those energies. I was able to see those spirits, and I was able to kind of like feel people's pain that would be sitting next to me. And I think I've told you this story before. I remember being in the second grade, and one of my friends talking to me about their parents getting divorced. And just sitting there with them and kind of like helping them cope and talking to them about how it wasn't the end of the world, not knowing that, at 12, 13, I would have to deal with you and my dad divorcing, and that dynamic of it changing everything in terms of what the foundation is to my life. So for me, again, love has always felt like a spiritual assignment. That conversation that I had with that one person in the second grade was a series of conversations to be continued throughout the rest of my life. So whether it's been divorce or whether it's been, the makeup or a breakup or a new relationship, these things are kind of like these divine assignments that I've been placed in people's lives for. And so I Am Love really came out of seeking resolution for some of the relationships that I had been a part of, some of the, unresolved trauma from my childhood, and kind of cycling that through relationships and blaming it on other people, when all the while needing to take ownership for that for myself, and just saying, hey, everything can't be everybody else's fault. So in this, what are those things that are my fault? And taking time to really like critically analyze who I was showing up as in those relationships, so that at the end of the day, I was honest about the fact that I could not control much in the relationship. But one of the things that I could 110% control was who I showed up as. So I decided to analyze who I showed up as in relationship and really critique myself, and not so much give the things that I felt like other people didn't do or did do, but really just analyze who I was showing up as. And it was just clarifying.
And that is so powerful, because I know as your mother, and I'm sure your father felt some of this as well, you talk about the psychological trauma of your childhood. And I know that in terms of divorcing and knowing what your father meant to you, and knowing the closeness that you all shared for the first 12 years of your life, you work your way in your mind through what that's going to feel like and how that's going to impact your child. And I would venture to say, as it happened in my case, that many parents stay together longer because they're trying to put off the inevitable in terms of causing any kind of psychological trauma to their children. But in some ways, the best you can do is the best you can do in terms of how you present what's about to happen to the child. You help them walk through it. You talk them through what they're feeling. And as parents, we have to take responsibility for what we know will happen over the long term, or what we suspect will happen over the long term. And what I mean by that is just really hand-holding your children through the process, and not allowing a guilt trip. It's not even that. It's not about, oh, mommy and daddy, you did this to me because y'all couldn't get along, as much as it is about, this is what we feel is best for us. We know you may not feel the same, but tell us how we can help you through what you're feeling. So I think it's just so brave of you to have been able to take all of that and turn it internally to something, and turn your attention internally to something that would have you reflect on who you wanted to be. That said, you open up the introduction of your book with this story about a young man you met in Louisiana when we were there doing some Greatness Now work, right? And initially, he ain't feeling you. He don't want you near him. He don't want you touching him, much less looking at him. And by the time you finished, though, your presentation to those 100 plus young men, he came over to you and you all had an exchange. And I'm wondering, what do you think from the time you engaged him the first time to the time that he came to you and you all had a conversation? Something penetrated him for sure. What do you think that was?
So 100% correct in what it is that you're saying. And this is something that you've seen me do, 1,000 times over. And I just tell people this all the time. I tell people that I love you. And one of the things that I realized in my journey to love was that love is not based on blood. Love is not based upon some romantic obligation. Mm-hmm. That love exists within us freely. It is the source of creation. Like if I have infinite wisdom, if I'm omniscient, if I'm omnipresent, why wouldn't I want to share that being with humanity? And to me, that's love. And so I feel like out of this space of what I have to offer to society, whether it's wisdom or whether it's just my experience, when I'm speaking, the last thing that I say, or even at some part in speaking, is I say, I love you. And in that day, I remember I closed with telling them that I love you, not because I have to, but because I have the freedom to do so. That somebody else did it for me before, I gave it to you, and they didn't have any obligation to do so. And that day, he told me that no one had ever told him that they loved him. Yeah. This was a 17-year-old boy who was 18, who at the time when he was incarcerated had a young lady pregnant and was about to be a father. Mm-hmm. He was involved in a gang, and ironically, well, not ironically, but in part because of his gang affiliation. When I walked up to him, he threw up, the signs of his set. He told me, F you, I don't know you. I'm from such and such ward. You can go in. And so instead of like taking that energy and becoming frustrated and upset, I said, cool. Like I literally said the word cool. I went to the next young man and went to go shake his hand. And the whole row of young men started laughing. Like, oh, he clowned you. He did it. And I said, listen, I said, man to man. I said, either you can shake my hand or I can move to the next person. I said, because I don't know what he's going through. I said, but I hope he figures it out. And so I guess the other thing is me not shutting him off, me not kind of just saying to him, all right, man, don't say nothing to me, don't deal with me. Like we oftentimes do when people don't receive our love.
Yeah,
like
we get bad energy for bad energy. We match bad
like
bad energy.
we separate ourselves, and then we carry that stuff into the next relationship over and over again. So I determined within myself that I wasn't going to take that energy any further. I was just going to give what it was that I had to give. And so at the end, he came up to me and he told me that nobody had ever told him that they loved him before.
Wow.
He literally fell in my arms and started crying. And, the guards were kind of like, he had to go, but I was just asking them like, can you give him a minute?
Yeah.
And I recall us keeping in contact. He got out of jail. He graduated high school. He went on to college. He and the young lady were about to get married. They had like moved into an apartment. But I think it's somewhat selfish of me to believe, but not necessarily impossible of me to believe that contribution on that day somehow changed his life. And I think that's the power that we have as human beings. There's a reason why there's 7 billion people on the planet. And there's a reason why we shouldn't be segregating ourselves. And I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but one of the things I want to add here is we talk so much about cutting people out of our lives for the sake of our mental health. The other part of that is people being in our lives is a part of mental health. Like you don't grow a resistance to something without facing it. And if you eliminate everything that comes to oppose you, then you become weak by the nature that you just refuse to experience it.
Wow.
So you're trying to build a toughness for something that you're pushing out of your life that makes no sense. You don't go to the gym and build muscle by sitting on the machine and hoping that you build muscle. No, you got to pick up them weights. You got to pull, you got to push, you got to do whatever it is. So
and to your point, when you talk about we don't build muscle by sitting on the machine, we also don't build muscle by stopping when it hurts.
Right.
When it turns, and any trainer will tell you, you keep pushing through and you keep pushing through. Even when you feel like you don't have anything else to give, you do another rep and you add another rep. So that's a great analogy. Great analogy.
Now, I just want to sum it by saying, it is not the expectation in my mind that people would drive themselves to a place of defeat. But the chapter that you're quoting is called Insanity. And I start the chapter with saying that people quote insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But you wouldn't call that insanity in the gym, right? Like you wouldn't call that insanity as a basketball player or a football player who's young and I'm up in the rain putting up jump shots, or I'm running up and down the field catching passes. And I think that sometimes we get scared and afraid in life, and we believe that if we leave this thing here, then somehow when we come back to it, it'll be better.
Wow.
And nothing in life grows without us nurturing it. I think that we have to learn to develop our relationship, our resistance, and take more accountability for how we show up. If people show up as not nice or mean, we don't have to show up as that in return. And be honest, I've been guilty of it, right? I think we all have a limit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But before you get to that limit, you have to do your best to try and, take your break, to take your time out, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So I just think that love does not operate by the same principles as our emotions. And I say in the book also that love may not seem logical always, but it is functional. That's the difference between when something is love and is not love. If it's not functional, if you and the job, you and the person, you and this thing that you feel passionate about are not progressing together, then that's not love, or there's something there that's inhibiting it.
Let me interject right here.
Yeah.
I love this, and I think this is great. It fits right here where you are. On page 92, you say, and I love that you say so many great things in the book.
Thank you.
But on page 92, you say, if love is truly what we are seeking, then there must also seek to be a representation of love consistently.
We must seek, yeah.
We must seek, right. You go on to say, it is easy to identify what you're in search of when what you are looking for is at work inside of yourself, because you say, nothing knows love more authentically than love itself.
Yep.
3 years later, that's a whole lot of goodness. 3 years later, how does that land with you?
Man, what I can tell you is there are a lot of things that I don't do because I love myself. And
Can you just say that one more time? Just can you just say that one more time? Just one more time.
There's a lot of
everybody
things,
that's listening.
there's a lot of things that I don't do now because I love myself.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, right? Like,
okay, I'm sorry for cutting you off.
Go ahead.
A great place to start just in life. When you talk about self-development, personal growth and development, not doing stuff because the motivation is not I can't afford to, not I just love myself so much, I ain't even gonna indulge. Yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We're so, and I'm gonna touch on what you just said, and then I'm gonna come back. And I'm there anyway. But we are so good at rationalizing our bad decisions that when we begin to love ourselves, like we start to understand what's an excuse and what is useful. And so I give a prime example, man. This is so ironic. Last night, I'm in my mind and I'm thinking about my ex, right? And the way that I'm riding home is like kind of passing where it is that she lived. And I don't say this in any type of creepy way, but this is somebody who I had a 5-year relationship with, somebody who was around Ari, somebody who I had intentions and plans on marrying, so much so that I had somebody making the ring. And so there is in this, you know, I guess it ended in November. So this isn't even like 9 months. This isn't even like a year old. So there are these moments when like I miss my friend. I just miss talking to this person. And as I'm riding, something in my mind is like, yo, just drive by. And I'm like, no. Like, I'm like, on the inside, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. This ain't happening. I love myself too much to ride past there because what would I get from it? Like, there's so many different unknowns that can happen from that situation. Like, it could be good, but it could also be very, very bad. And so I'm like, no, I'm going in the house. And as I'm riding home, I'm just having like this really, really sad moment because I don't love without the intention of following through. And so in that, it's like,
you don't love without the intention of following the word. You don't love without the intention of following through. I love that.
So I say that to say it takes time for that love to exit my system. In my mind, this is somebody who I still love. In my mind, this is somebody who there's a potential for me to still want if all of these things align, but that's not like, it's not functional. I might be able to rationalize it like in my mind because we do such a good job of just making up these stories. Mm-hmm. And so when you ask like 3 years later, where am I? Like, I am smart enough and I love myself enough to not make bad decisions. At the same time, it's not that those bad decisions don't enter into my mind. It's not that they don't come and approach me like, dude, you could do this.
Right.
But I love myself enough to not act on those bad thoughts because I just don't want to deal in the stuff that came about as a result of that again. So I'm more than willing to have a conversation with that person about what happened between the two of us. I'm more than willing to learn from it and build from it. But irrationally, like just going to that place and I'm good on that. So 3 years from now, like I'm in a place where I'm building a sense of love for myself. I'm building a better relationship with God, and not again from just a religious aspect, but the ability to see God in everything and everyone and reverence that by being, you know, again, as you talked about, this kind of consistent presence of love in the space of other people. So that's where I am 3 years later.
Amen. Packaged in that statement also was this piece about it's easy to identify what you're in search of when it already exists inside of you. From a millennial perspective, what do you think people in your generation are missing when it comes to searching, the searching of it all? When it comes to, I want to be with somebody, I want somebody that wants to be with me. What do you think that piece is about? What can millennials do different? I'm 52, so we have a different perspective sometimes. So I just wanted you to speak from a millennial perspective. What do you think
Absolutely.
that could be done? How do you think that could be done better?
I think one of the biggest things for us is that we have this picturesque view of how things are supposed to transpire or take place, and I think that in many ways we are deconstructing those images of what love is supposed to look like. However, I think that we oftentimes battle this sense of worthiness, like it, the best way to describe this is there is this bar, right? Like I was on a live last night and they were talking about is the bar on the floor. But I think that, we always have these hypothetical bars, these hypothetical aspirations, instead of really having conversations, instead of really developing goals together. Yes, I think that you should have your own standards, but I think that you should also be talking to people realistically, not just you and your girls talking amongst yourselves about what relationships look like, or guys really taking oftentimes what I've experienced as very ignorant conversations as a way to navigate relationships, but really talking to people who challenge you, building relationships with people who challenge you. And I think that oftentimes we like to go to our amen corner and be like, all dudes are trash, or, like all of these women just want a dude with a bunch of money to give, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think that we have to really begin to have conversations to really understand like where we are. I feel like until we begin to like come out of our corners and really develop a sense of where everybody is, that's what's really going to sustain this sense of growth. But deeper than that, I think the thing is what we really need to do is get out of our own way. And what
you mean?
And what I mean by that is like, I talk about unresolved, traumas all the time. And I think that so often we, again, like in living up to the bar, like we get the job, we get the car, we get the house, we do better than our parents did. But the reality is we don't move out the emotional baggage of things that didn't work for our parents, of things that we haven't experienced. And so we take this trauma with us like everywhere that we go, and we wind up blaming other people for stuff that we need to still work on ourselves. And so we accept, like one of the things that I talk about is that if you don't spend time dealing with your unresolved traumas, then your unresolved traumas will be the foundation for your relationship. And I think that that's oftentimes what happens for millennials, is that our unresolved traumas are winding up as the foundation for our relationships because we refuse to push out to work through all of the unresolved traumas. So, I mean, we need to first have conversations with people of the opposite sex, or if you're into the same sex thing, then you have conversations with people who, are in the space of what you aspire to be in relationships. And then the second thing is that you need to push out those, will really work through them, and then push out those unresolved traumas, because without doing that, you just repeat this cycle. And then if you're not conscious enough to really look at yourself, then you wind up blaming it on other people, and everybody else is always the issue.
And I think what people really miss, millennials and otherwise, is that, there's a saying, wherever you are, you take yourself with you. And it is so true. So whether you are in this relationship this month and you find in 6 months it doesn't work out, and then you end up in another one, 6 months later, and that doesn't work out, you just keep moving from relationship to relationship, to your point, without dealing with the foundation of the drama and the trauma that's having you not be able to be successful in a relationship. You will take that with you wherever you go. And as you said, it can't be everybody else's fault. And so whether you're 25, 35, 45, or 55, it becomes incumbent upon all of us to really, really, when we talk about this love and relationship thing, really take some self-reflection time and not just reflect, start with the reflection, but also really nailing down what it is I can do to be a better person. And yes, it's going to cost you work, and you're going to cry a little bit, but you're going to be okay. At the end of the day, we all have a responsibility to deal with our stuff and to not put that on other people, right? Because one of the things that frustrates me the most about this thing called love and relationships is that we really try to use other people as an escape, right? So you meet a 50-year-old man, a 60-year-old man in my case, who has, as you said, childhood baggage and trauma. And I'm saying at 70 years old, at 60 years old, at 55 years old, it's no longer about what your mother did. It's no longer about what your father did, as much as it is about what are you willing to do to deal with where you are and where you find yourself. And as you said, the stuff that keeps showing up over and over and over again, whether it's in a private moment with yourself or in a loving relationship with someone else, you have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, and I mean, 100%. Like I also speak about in the book that you can't change the origins of who you are. Like your foundation is your foundation. But much like building a house, if I have a house and my foundation is bad, I can break up that foundation. Like I can take it up and I can lay another one. And I don't mean to in any way say that it's easy. However, when you do the work, anything is possible. Right. And I think that so often, whether it's daddy issues, whether it's absenteeism, whether it's a father who was incarcerated, whether it's rape, molestation, like these things are things that happen to us. They are not the whole of who we are. Mm-hmm. And I'm a witness to the fact that when you decide that you want different and you do the work to get different, different will happen. Yeah. And the best part of life is not the fact that you attain this thing that you wanted, but you have the gratification of knowing that you've done the work, that you put it in, that it's there because you did it. And I think that so many times we deprive ourselves of it. We want to meme ourselves to death. We want to read ourselves to death. We want to girl group ourselves to death. For guys, we want to drink ourselves to death. We want to party ourselves to death. We want to try to sleep with as many people as possible. And the reality is, when you talk about 3 years later, where am I? Like, I'm not sleeping with everybody. I'm not just drinking all of, like, I've really, really positioned myself in such a way. And, you know, you and I talked about this. Like, I really feel like I'm in a place where I don't really want to date anybody for the next 10 years of my life. Like, I really want to get to a place where I'm just focused on whatever it is that God has me. And if for whatever reason, somebody.
10 years is a long time, sir. 10 years is a long time. Just saying.
I'm trying to tell you, I've spent the last, like, 15 years of my life in relationships. And while I'm grateful for what it has gone, like literally, like Ari's mom and I started dating at 17 to 18. Ari was born when I was 22, 23. And even like 2 to 3 years after that, we still dealt with each other. I left that relationship for 1.5 years, almost 2 years, and then jumped into a 5-year relationship. Like I have spent a significant amount of my life in relationships. And I'm grateful for the fact that, you know, I've been able to do that, and I've been able to travel the country. I've been able to do all of these amazing things. But there's also just this next level of my life that I want to get to, because relationships can be a distraction if they are not about progress and building whatever it is that God has purposed us in this life to do. So the reality is, for me, I don't want to date anybody who doesn't align with that purpose. I'm clear on that. So, and I'm working on what that dating thing looks like, because I'm a man and I got needs. But, you know, I'm really in that place. So.
Okay. All right. So as we prepare to wrap up, I want to know, what have you learned about yourself during these last 2.5 months? So many people have been speaking to why they think COVID-19 came. But what have you learned about yourself during this COVID-19 coronavirus time?
Yeah. If nothing else, COVID-19 has really for me, been somewhat affirmation of the fact that like I've done the work. And I think that there are very few, I don't know, I want to say very few moments in life, but those moments in life, if you're not conscious of them, can pass you by. And I think that whether it's been the way that I've been asked to step up in my work life, or whether it's just these things that I'm planning and executing in my personal life, I've just been really, really grateful for the stillness to really just kind of see where things are. Because when life is what it was, I should say, because it'll never go back to what it was. When life was what it was, there was just social media, everything was moving fast, people were out, and there was this perception that there was so much going on. And now with all of that stuff at a place of stillness, it really, like, can you survive this? What's your mental state in this space? And I've not been in a space where I just really felt like I had to get out the house, or I needed somebody here with me, or like, I'm just really, really happy that I've done the work. And I think that, there's a quote that talks about an idle mind is the devil's playground. And what I know is that my mind isn't idle. What I know is that I'm working and it's constantly moving to get to a place of progress. And so if it's one thing that I've learned about myself, is to give myself more credit where I wasn't before, because we can be, our own worst critic, as it said. And, sometimes, like, there's been so many quotes of people who say, if you don't find yourself, richer or whatever it is, what's going on with COVID-19, then you haven't done anything. And I just think that that's such an asinine way to look at this. There are over 30 million people who have filed for unemployment. Economically, our country is at a very, very horrible place. So if you are one of those people who have not made money, if you are one of those people who your relationship is stressed and tried right now, if you are one of those people like myself who's dealing with virtual learning and it's testing the relationship that you have with your child, like, you are in a space of normalcy. And I think that if you are holding up,
that's good affirmation,
and you haven't lost your mind, you aren't in the house doing things that are adverse to yourself or to those who you love, like, you're winning. And I don't think that you should just settle for that, but I'm just want to let you know that you're doing a great job. And if nothing else, your relationship with yourself is in a good place. Continue to build on what that looks like as it relates to other people. Because if you build a relationship with yourself, then you have a better way of dealing with other people. I'm also not the person who feels like in order to love other people, I got to figure out how to love myself. I feel like it's one big experience, and loving other people will teach you how to love yourself, and vice versa. So it's this yin and yang, this reciprocity thing. So that's what I've learned, man, and I'm doing the work.
Amen. All right, so last question. I believe that gratitude changes everything. You know that about me. I have gratitude stones all over my house.
As do I, because of you and my son.
Yes. Gratitude is important. What are you most grateful for today?
Jesus. I'm gonna cry. I'm and I think that I tell this to you and my dad, like, all the time, and even to Kyle. Like, I just randomly text him and let him know that I'm just grateful for the example that you all have set. Like, I sometimes joke about the fact that I used to come home and you would have brought somebody home and we didn't know whether they were staying for 6 hours or for 6 days or for 6 months. And, and I got so many brothers, cousins, sisters as a result of the example that you set for loving and caring for people, right? And then I look at, my dad, who was just relentless in his pursuit to build God's kingdom. Like, I just watched him put in hour after hour after hour. Like, he'd come pick me up from school. I'd be at church. I'd fall asleep. I'd wake up. I'd still be at church.
You'll be at church.
A whole different day. But nonetheless, like, that experience of watching his work ethic is amazing. And it's taught me that if you really want anything, like, you got to work for it, whether it's a relationship or whether it's money or whatever it may be. And then with Kyle, just watching who he is as a father, watching the integrity with which he deals with people. I don't know my brother to have ever had an enemy in his entire life.
That's right.
And I think that speaks to the integrity of who he is and just his sense of surety around who he is, and not really trying to fit himself into things and places where he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And just those examples, and those who have just given me, relentless love, Dr. Bunley, who I love, man, and Andrew Knox, who I love. Captain Andrew, what's up, man? Just so many others, Dr. Tyrone Powers, David Miller, Lamar Shields, like Derek Chase, like I could go on. But these people who are just good examples of what love is, I'm just grateful for those relationships.
Amen.
Without relationships, without good relationships depositing good stuff into me, I definitely couldn't be who I am. Because in as much as I can sit here and smile, I've experienced some things that I would never want anybody else to experience. But I'm not broken because of it. I've turned those things into building blocks. And that experience has given me the ability to give a block to somebody else so they can do what they need to do. Like this moment right here.
Exactly. I love you.
I love you.
I'm so grateful that you took time to talk to me. I know we talk all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you consented that we could have this public conversation, because Absolutely. I love who you are. And I tell you and Kyle this all the time. It is one of the greatest honors of my life to be your mom. And I have two of the most amazing sons on the planet. You are the best fathers any child could ever ask for. Just decent human beings. And I may not have gotten a lot right in life, but I got right being the mother of Kyle and James. And I can close my eyes and take my transition with the most joy, knowing that I'm leaving behind two of God's best men. That makes me just, as you said, emotional. So thank you so much.
And we are because of you. So.
And we will talk soon.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty.
Love you. Peace.
Love you too. That was me talking to my baby boy, James Green. Love him so much. I love what he's doing with his life, and I hope that you enjoyed hearing him talk about what he's doing with his life. He's grown so much. He may not be perfect, none of us are, but he is a wonderful, wonderful guy. So thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to talking to you next week, of course. Bye-bye.